All right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Always.
Today, we're looking into a law that's causing quite the stir in Ohio. It's all about, well, police departments being able to actually charge for access to those police
Oh,
videos.
wow. This is a hot topic.
It really is. And we've got some interesting sources. We've got the super passionate Reddit thread full of all kinds of opinions on this. And then a News 5 Cleveland article that really digs into like the nitty-gritty of the law itself.
Okay.
And of course, Governor DeWine's perspective on it all.
So are we trying to figure out if this is really about police departments, recouping costs? Or is there like a deeper issue here? Like, are we talking about barriers to transparency and all that?
Exactly. That's the big question. Is it just about the money or is something else going on? So let's start with the law itself. Ohio House Bill 315.
Okay.
This is the one that gives law enforcement the ability to charge, wait for it, up to $75 an hour.
Wow. $75 an hour.
Per hour for gathering and redacting any of that police video footage.
That's a lot.
With a cap of $750 per request.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. You have to pay those fees before they even release the footage.
See, that's what gets me. I mean, this whole thing just feels like it's clashing with the idea of the Freedom of Information Act, like FOIA.
Right.
That's been a major part of keeping things transparent in government for, like, forever.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it allows for fees, reasonable ones to cover the cost of, like, processing the request and everything. But it shouldn't be a barrier to actually getting that information.
And that's exactly what people are fired up about over on Reddit.
Oh, I bet.
They're pointing out that, hey, they already pay for police departments.
Right.
Through their taxes, and this is like double taxation.
That's a good point.
Yeah. One commenter even said straight up, go away, poor people.
Oof. It's a bit harsh, but...
It is, but it brings up this question of, like, fairness and equity.
Exactly. Access to justice, it shouldn't be about how much money you have. Imagine, like, you're accused of something. You need that footage to prove you didn't do it, but you just can't afford it.
That's a scary thought.
That is.
Especially when you think about how, like, historically these public records laws have been so important. Like, they've been used to hold those in power accountable.
Yeah, I mean, look at Watergate, right?
Exactly.
Like, journalists kept digging, used those FOIA requests, and that's how the truth came out.
Exactly.
That's how it works.
So when we see laws like this, it's natural to feel a little uneasy. Like, are we going backwards with transparency?
It makes you wonder.
Yeah. Now, Governor DeWine, according to the News 5 Cleveland article, he's saying this is all to help the police departments,
Okay.
especially smaller ones.
Yeah.
Because they're getting overwhelmed by these requests. And he's worried about private companies maybe making a profit from these police videos.
Okay, I can see that side of it, I guess, but
It sounds reasonable on the surface.
let's think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Police departments, they're already funded by us, the taxpayers.
That's true.
So all their resources, like the time they spend on putting together that footage and editing it, it's all like public resources anyway, right?
That's a good point. And the article mentions that there's not really any clear data on how much these requests are actually costing police departments in Ohio.
Really?
So some legal experts are saying these fees, they just seem way too high. Like they could actually be preventing people from requesting information that they have a right to.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't even know how much it costs, how do they know if the fee is right?
Exactly. It's a little shady. And this all plays into Ohio's history with public records. They've always been, well, kind of tough to get.
Oh, really?
Even before this law, it was a bit of a hassle.
Yeah.
There's this one comment on the Reddit thread that sums it up perfectly. The commenter asks, doesn't state income, property, sales, and registration taxes already pay for this?
Wow.
Like, come on, we're already paying for this.
It is kind of like double taxation, right?
Yeah, right. And it makes you wonder, like, are we moving further away from this idea that police departments are accountable to the public? Like, is that relationship changing?
That's a great question. And it makes you think, who benefits from this?
Yeah.
Who benefits from us not knowing what's going on?
That's what we need to figure out. It's not just everyday folks who are worried about this law, though. The News 5 Cleveland article, it brings up journalists, too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They use police videos all the time, right, to report on important stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Like use of force, potential misconduct,
Huge implications for investigative journalism, for sure.
Exactly. Imagine trying to, investigate a possible case of police brutality.
Yeah.
But getting the footage, it could cost you like hundreds of dollars.
That's going to make things really tough.
Especially for smaller news organizations.
Yeah, they don't have those kinds of resources.
Right, exactly. And then it raises this bigger question, about the role of the press, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're supposed to hold these powerful groups accountable.
Right.
But if they can't even get the information,
exactly.
how can they do their jobs? How can we, the public, be informed about what's happening?
It's like we can't forget, a free press is crucial for a healthy democracy even.
Absolutely.
Journalists, they're like watchdogs. They're supposed to bark when something's wrong.
Right.
Keep things in check. And this law could be like muzzling them.
It's true. And it all feeds into this anxiety we're seeing in that Reddit thread, too.
Yeah.
This fear that it's creating like a two-tiered justice system where only people with money can access the information they need.
It's a valid concern.
To protect themselves, right. Or even just to try to, right a wrong.
If evidence becomes something you have to pay for, it just puts people who are already struggling at a bigger disadvantage.
Absolutely. And the thread, it's full of these personal stories.
Oh, wow.
Like, one commenter talks about being falsely accused of a crime.
Oh, jeez.
They got cleared, but only because they were able to get that police video footage.
It's scary to think, what if they hadn't been able to afford that?
Exactly. And now with this law, who knows how many people are going to be in that same situation?
That's a powerful point.
And then there's another commenter who they brought up this really interesting idea.
What's that?
That this law, it might even discourage people from reporting crimes in the first place.
Really?
Or even cooperating with police investigations. Because what if they need that footage later on?
Oh, I see.
But they can't afford it, so they just stay quiet.
Wow. I hadn't thought about that, but that makes total sense.
Yeah, it's like this ripple effect.
Eroding that trust between law enforcement and the community even more.
Exactly. Transparency is how you build that trust, and this just sends the message that information, it's got a price tag.
Yeah, that's like they're saying, want the truth. You got to pay for it.
It makes you wonder, were there any other options they could have considered?
Like what?
Like maybe the state could have provided funding to help police departments, handle all these requests.
Right.
Or maybe a sliding scale fee system or something.
So it's not just a flat fee for everyone.
Exactly. Taking into account people's financial situation.
Those are really good points.
Yeah.
There had to be a way to find a better solution.
That's more balanced, right.
Where you're taking care of the concerns of law enforcement, but you're also protecting that public right to know.
Definitely. We need both.
Okay, so speaking of Governor DeWine and his actions, there's this this other layer to this whole thing that's really interesting.
Oh, what's that?
Well, the News 5 Cleveland article, it points out that while he signed this law, the one that potentially restricts access to police videos,
right.
He also vetoed provisions that could have actually increased transparency in other areas.
Really?
Yeah, one provision would have shielded healthcare professionals.
Healthcare professionals?
Yeah, from any disciplinary action if they expressed, controversial medical opinions, even if it went against what the state said.
Even then. And another one, it would have exempted certain public officials from ethics requirements.
So, wait, hold on. On the one hand, we've got this law making it harder to see what police are doing.
Right.
And on the other, he's making it harder to scrutinize healthcare professionals and public officials.
Exactly.
That's kind of a head scratcher, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you think about where do we draw the line with transparency?
And who gets to decide where that line is?
Exactly. And who benefits from that line being in a certain spot?
Right. This isn't just some theoretical debate either.
It's not.
This law, it could have real consequences for people who are just trying to hold those in power accountable, whether it's through, journalism, legal action, or just staying informed about what's happening in their communities.
This Ohio situation, it's like a wake-up call, don't you think?
It is. It's a reminder that we have to stay alert. We have to stay informed. About these issues. We got to participate in these debates. Because this fight for transparency, it's never really over.
So, we've really dug into this new law in Ohio, but what's the takeaway here? What can we learn from all of this? It feels like this could be a sign of things to come,
Yeah, I think you're right. This whole push and pull between wanting transparency and also protecting these institutions from scrutiny is something we're seeing everywhere.
It really is. Think about those body camera debates.
Oh, yeah.
There was all this excitement at first, right? Body cameras, they're going to increase accountability, improve relationships between the police and the community.
Right.
But then we started seeing cases where footage was like withheld or redacted, and it just raised these questions about whether that promise of transparency was actually being kept.
It's like we're figuring out that technology by itself isn't some magic solution. It's how we use it, how we regulate it, how we make sure people can actually access the information it captures. That's what determines whether it's a tool for transparency or just a way to hide the truth.
And it's not just about law enforcement, right? We're seeing these same issues in other areas where information is key for accountability. Like, look at the fights to get data on environmental pollution.
Right.
Or the battles over transparency and healthcare costs.
Yeah, it's like a pattern. More and more control over information, especially by these powerful institutions, and less access for the public.
And that's what makes this deep dive so important. It's not just about this one law in Ohio. It's about a much bigger principle. The public's right to know what their government is doing, how their tax dollars are being spent, and whether the people in charge are actually acting in the best interests of the public.
It's about understanding that transparency is not just some feel-good idea.
Right.
It's the foundation of a democracy that works. Without it, we can't hold our institutions accountable, we can't have informed debates, and we can't really participate in shaping the policies that impact our lives.
So where do we go from here? What can we do to, push back against this trend and protect transparency? Sometimes it feels overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be a little daunting.
Like you're just one person going up against these huge systems.
It's true, but change usually starts small, at the local level.
Okay.
Get involved in your community, talk to your elected officials, support groups that are fighting for transparency and accountability. Those things can make a difference.
And it's about staying informed, too, right? Knowing your rights, understanding the laws about accessing information, and being willing to speak up when those rights are being violated.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, right? And in the fight for transparency, knowledge is the most powerful weapon we have.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
I have.
We looked at this new law in Ohio, the potential consequences for individuals and journalists, and the bigger picture of transparency and accountability in our society. But the main thing we want you to take away from this deep dive is, well, the knowledge and the tools to keep this conversation going.
Exactly.
To be active participants in creating a future where things are more transparent and accountable. Because remember, this fight for transparency, it's a team effort. It takes all of us. We have to stay vigilant, we have to stay informed, and we have to stay engaged. And if we work together, we can make sure that the truth always comes to light.